So we will begin today's webinar now. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nofal Jaferi, and I am delighted to welcome you all on behalf of the Education Above All Foundation. It is my absolute pleasure to be moderating today's webinar, Beyond the Degree, Preparing Youth for Careers in the AI Era, held in recognition of International Youth Day. Thank you all so much for joining us from all around the world, representing different sectors and perspectives to discuss one of the most pressing questions facing young people today, which is how can we better prepare young people for successful careers in a rapidly changing AI-driven world? So as artificial intelligence continues to transform industries, redefine occupations, and reshape labor markets, preparing young people for employment takes more than the academic knowledge alone. It takes practical experience, digital and transferable skills, adaptability, and stronger collaboration between education providers, employers, governments, and development partners. So this commitment is central to the work of the Education Above All Foundation. EAA supports students from the primary level all the way through to employment. So Educate a Child reaches out-of-school children at the primary level, giving them access to a foundational education. Al Fakhura then supports promising students through higher education, opening the door to university and specialized learning. Through Silatech, EAA connects young people to economic opportunities and career-building jobs through innovative employment and enterprise initiatives, helping bridge the gap between education and employment by aligning young people's skills with evolving labor market needs. Alongside this, Rota empowers youth with the skills, knowledge, leadership, and advocacy capacity to become active contributors to their communities. Together, these programs support young people through their journey from education and skills development to meaningful employment, entrepreneurship, leadership, and active citizenship. So before we begin, thank you all so much to those who participated in our robust challenge while joining today's session. It was great seeing your responses in the chat. So the two phrases were skills for work and higher education. They capture exactly what we are here to discuss. So how these elements work together to better prepare young people for the future of work. So today we'll be hearing from a young graduate, a digital skills provider, an employment innovation expert, and an international development partner. Together, we will explore the challenges young people face, the opportunities emerging in an AI-driven economy, and what it will take to strengthen education to employment pathways. We would also love your active participation throughout today's session by responding to our live polls, sharing your thoughts in the chat, and sharing questions during our audience Q&A towards the end of the session. So before hearing from our panelists, we'd like to hear from you first. Our first poll will be now ready. Okay, so to begin, we'd like to better understand how our audience views today's labor market. So you should now be able to see the first poll on your screen. The question asks, how prepared do you think today's young people are for the future of work in an AI-driven labor market? So are they very prepared? Are they somewhat prepared? Are they neutral or unsure? Not very prepared? Thank you to those who participated. So yes, as you could see, the results highlight those perceptions of young people's readiness very considerably. So a reflection of just how complex today's labor market has become. So as technology reshapes industries and the skills employers look for, understanding these shifts matter now more than ever. So let's begin our discussion by exploring how each of our panelists view the changing world of work from their unique perspective. In this opening round, we'll explore how the world of work is evolving and what these challenges mean for young people. So we'll hear perspectives from someone who has recently made the transition from education to employment, a leading digital skills provider, a global employment innovation initiative, and an international development partner working to create opportunities for youth. So let's begin with the youth perspective. Our first panelist is Nima Ahmed, an EAA Al Fakhura scholar and an applied AI researcher with experiences spanning academia, industry, and government. So, through her work in AI research, technical project coordination, and technology driven education initiatives, she brings firsthand insights into the transition from higher education into today's rapidly evolving labor market. So, Ni'mat, it's a pleasure to have you with us today. My question to you is, during your transition from university to employment, was there a moment when you realized that succeeding in today's world of work requires more than just earning a degree? What changed your perspective?
First of all, thank you very much for hosting me, Noor, and thank you for the amazing introduction. And thank you for the question also. There wasn't like one dramatic moment for me. It was like more of a gradual recalibration, but I can point when it started. Like throughout the university, especially at like my graduate levels, your word is measured in currency, like how strong is the work, how novel is the contribution. I had near perfect grades in several peer reviews publication, and I genuinely assumed that trajectory would simply continue once I entered the workforce. But then you enter the workplace and you realize that the definition of good work changes completely. At university, you have a problem that is well defined. The objectives is relatively clear, and then you are getting assessed on whether you get like the right answer or you produced a strong work. However, in the workplace, often the challenge is figuring out what the problem is to begin with. You're working with different people, different priorities, different perspectives, and sometimes very different expectation of what success looks like. You might technically have an excellent idea, but that does not necessarily mean that it's the right solution. You have to understand the people who will use it, the organization you are working with, and the constraints that you are operating under. Whether you are proposing like can actually be implemented, the solution that you have in your head. And another difference that graduate only will appreciate once they experience it, that your work does not exist in isolation anymore. At university, you're responsible for like your own assignment and own research project. However, in a professional environment, your work is connected to other people's work. You need to communicate and coordinate, manage expectation, and sometimes adapt your approach since the circumstances have been changing. That is what is the probably biggest recalibration for me. I realized that being good at what you studied is only one part of being effectively professional. You need academic competence and technical competence, of course. However, you need the communication, like the judgment, adaptability, collaboration, and the ability to keep learning. You need to be comfortable saying, I don't know this yet, but I can figure it out later. And you need to be able to take something you know and translate it into something useful for others. I also realized that transitioning does not mean like leaving your university skills behind. Quite the opposite. My academic and background have been extremely valuable in my career. However, workplace taught me how to apply those skills in much more complex environments. So I wouldn't say that university did not prepare me for employment. It gave me the foundation. What changes was me realizing that employment requires you to expand that foundation beyond knowledge. You move from being evaluated mainly of what like you can produce individually to be valued for the outcome you can help create with other people. And I think one of the most important things students can understand before they graduate, the goal isn't simply to leave university knowing more. It's to leave knowing how to learn, how to work with people, how to adapt, and how to turn what you know into something valuable.
Thank you so much, Nerma, for sharing your experience. Your story is a reminder that while higher education does provide us with the essential foundation, navigating today's labor market increasingly calls for continuous learning and skills that go even beyond the classroom. So, this brings us to our next speaker who works directly with young people to build those future ready skills. Joining us next is Yahya Bouhlel, co-founder and CEO of Go My Code, one of the leading AI and technology education companies across Africa and the Middle East. Under his leadership, Go My Code has trained more than 50,000 learners and partners with governments, universities, and industry to prepare talent for the AI economy. His work focuses on making high-quality technology education accessible and equipping young people with the future-ready skills. Yahya, thank you so much for joining us. My question to you is today, so we've just heard about the challenges young people face when transitioning into the labor market. From Go My Code's perspective, how are the skills employers seek changing in the age of AI?
Thank you, Nov, for the question and for the quality of the moderation. Really excited to be part of the conversation today and share a bit more about my perspective and Go My Code perspective. This is obviously a very complex and tough question, and it's also a question that is constantly being challenged and changing all the time. But at Go My Code, we do our fair amount of work, and we listen to a lot of companies and students and enterprise and governments, and we really try to understand this topic. And we basically we like to think about them as four major shifts, let's say, in what employers are looking for. So the just a reminder on the company mission today is to help young people find relevant jobs and show tangible economic impact on their lives. So it's in our thesis to listen to employers and help them hire our students. That's why we spend a lot of time listening to employers. And from our conversations with over 400 companies today, these are the four shifts that we see, and these are the shifts that are also shaping the learning tracks and the programs that we design and build every few months. And so we have this school called AI School, and within this school, we're constantly building new programs. And so the first shift, which is the first layer, I would like to think about it as the AI literacy layer, which is this layer is becoming a basic professional skill. So not necessarily everyone needs to become an AI engineer or a developer today, but almost every professional should understand what AI can do, how to apply it to their work, where its limitations are. They should understand issues because AI still hallucinates. So issues like hallucinations, privacy, biases, and almost AI needs a judgment or human loop in the loop at every single layer. So like humans are needed and they remain quite necessary. So this is why we have tracks, for example, like the introduction to artificial intelligence, which gives beginner a practical foundation, or the generative AI for professional, which helps any professional today use AI, for example, in research, in communication, in analysis, in content creation, and really in the everyday business workflow. So that's the first shift. The second shift is from simply using AI tools to building useful solutions with AI tools. So employers they need people who can do more than just writing prompt or using AI tools. They need people who can understand a business problem, let's say, connected to real AI data, automate workflow, build an assistant or an agent, and deploy something that like other customers or colleagues can actually use. This is, for example, the purpose of one of our top seller tracks, which is the AI Development Bootcamp, where learners progress from, like, for example, AI foundations to Python to prompt engineering to learning how to use RAG systems. And RAG systems today helps connecting AI to private documents and data, to automation. And the goal is really not for someone to really just use AI tools, but it's really to build and deploy and test a complete AI solution. So that's the second layer. The third layer, which is a much deeper, let's say, technical specialization layer, which is companies today, precisely companies that are developing AI products. They need talent that understands LLM systems, that understands deep learning. They can understand model evaluation, computer vision, for example, and production reliability. This is why we have an advanced pathway, for example, that includes AI engineering professional and deep learning. We build this path with NVIDIA, so it prepares also to NVIDIA certification. And these are tracks are more advanced employer needs. So basically, let's say people can move from like adopting AI tools or building AI application to much a broader scope of contributing to more like building much more reliable AI systems, let's say. And the fourth shift, which is the last shift, or the fourth layer, is we need people that can turn these AI capabilities into business value. So this is like a new role, let's say, called AI for deployment engineer, which is basically what we assume here is that technical knowledge is not enough. So people must understand the users, identify the right problems, and validate whether AI is the appropriate solution, and building something with AI that can be people can actually need or use. And this is the thinking behind our AI for entrepreneurs track, which basically helps learners move from like a simple idea to a completely validated and launchable AI product. And so yeah, I mean, so this requires also some technical background. But I mean, if you think about it across these four layers, I mean, the idea remains the same, which is we don't necessarily give as much importance to knowledge, but rather to what can you do, what can you build, what can you verify, what can you improve, and the responsibility on the delivery. So this is like why, for example, our programs combine both technical learning with also projects, teachers, feedback, collaboration, even, and career preparation, because we think that like employability today does not just depend on having the technical ability. It really depends on having the right foundations, but also the right technical foundation or ability, but also the ability to build. And with the ability to build, you have a judgment that is associated to it for creating real value, you know, in our economy today. So this is really how we see it. Like we see it from these four layers, and each layer we build tracks, and each layer we talk to users and companies, and we follow this super closely. We're changing programs today every single month, every single week. We're adding new technologies, new AI tools. But this is really the principle behind our thinking. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Yahya, for that valuable insight. So, knowing and understanding which skills are in demand is only one part of the picture. AI is also changing how employers identify, assess, and recruit talent. So, let's now explore how these changes are shaping employment opportunities for young people. So our next panelist is Chris McClay, Program Director of the Job Tech Alliance at Mercy Corp. With more than 15 years of experience in youth employment and economic development across Africa and beyond, Chris works at the intersection of technology, employment, and innovation, bringing together governments, private sector partners, and startups to improve employment outcomes and shape the future of work. Chris, we're so delighted to have you with us today. My question to you is, AI is transforming not only jobs, but also how employers recruit and assess talent. What are the biggest challenges you are seeing in today's labor market, and what do they mean for young job seekers?
Thanks so much for the question and for having me. At the Job Tech Alliance, we get asked to look into the crystal ball about the future of labor markets quite a lot. And in truth, you can't predict exactly what's going to happen over the next decade. But I'll pick three themes which have already been happening over the course of the last decade in terms of labor market shifts, but we expect AI to accelerate. The first one of these, just to really emphasize, and sorry for being a bit of a bad news guy, but is a lack of entry-level jobs. We've been talking about it for years or decades. And just to be real, it's going to get worse. All employers, and our work is across Africa, but it exists for the rest of the world. Employers are asking, particularly for entry-level roles, would it be easier to hire, train, and manage a Gen Z, or just work out how to do it with AI, right? And that's a pretty tough thing to face. It's rude, it's misguided, but in a context of change, there is a lot of hesitancy to recruit, particularly for full-time roles at an entry level. This connects to the kind of second theme, that in this context of hesitancy and uncertainty, we expect an ongoing reorientation of the labor market to a portfolio of work where, this has already happened over the last decade, of a move from full-time roles to increasingly gig or fractional roles. But while there is this uncertainty about what the future of work and labor markets look like, we expect there to be more and more gig, part-time, and project-based work. And while that historically was often just this portfolio of work approach was just for kind of more seasoned career professionals, we expect this to start at entry level as well. And this connects to this third theme, which, at the Job Tech Alliance, we work with what we call job tech platforms. We work with over 600 gig matching, job matching, e-commerce, freelance platforms across Africa. And we really do believe that platforms are the future of work. And we think that in a context of more gig, more fractional, more project-based work, platforms are going to play a bigger and bigger role as people are constantly looking for work and employers are constantly looking for people to do bits of work for them. Now, with this bird's eye view that we have working with these 600 platforms, there is a real challenge and a real shift taking place, right? The recruitment industry has been built for decades on CVs and cover letters. Now, AI can enable anyone to build a perfectly tailored CV and cover letter, or indeed build a bot to automatically tailor CVs and cover letters for 500 roles and set it off. So we would expect over the next few years there to be a kind of move away from the traditional way of doing recruitment. And just to point out, in some ways, this is great, right? CVs and cover letters were never a good measure of capacity, and they were never good for young people whose CVs didn't kind of measure up well against more experienced people. So we're expecting to see more and more of a move to kind of skills-based testing, and that's great. But just to really emphasize, in these next couple of years, it's going to be really messy, right? We're going to have more and more young people utilizing AI to create those bots and send out a million applications. We're going to see more and more recruiters and platforms utilizing AI to review this massive increase in applications. We're going to have AI speaking to AI, and it's going to be pretty ugly. So a really key element of this transition is about young people working out how they stand out. And I think we'll be getting back to that as the conversation goes on.
Thank you so much, Chris. Yeah, so we've now heard how young people are experiencing this shift, how skills requirements are evolving, and how recruitment itself is being transformed. So responding to these changes also takes investment, collaboration, and strong partnerships across sectors, which brings us to our final speaker in this round. Our final panelist is Mariam El-Ghitani, acting head of the African and Asian project section at Qatar Fund for Development. She oversees development programs across education, health, economic development, investment, and infrastructure, and brings a unique perspective that combines international development with the expertise in AI and digital transformation. So through her work, she contributes to strengthening development partnerships that support education, youth employability, and inclusive pathways to the future of work. So Mariam, thank you so much for joining us today. My question to you is, so preparing young people for the future of work requires more than just education alone. So from QFFD's perspective, what are the challenges and opportunities in helping youth successfully transition from education to employment in today's rapidly changing world?
Thank you, Noof, for the question and for leading this panel. So from QFFD's perspective, I think higher education remains a critical foundation for the future of young people. However, that transition from education to employment depends greatly on what surrounds that education. So as you mentioned, in my role of overseeing development projects across Africa and Asia, there are three main reoccurring challenges that I'd like to highlight and that we see as a funding entity at QFFD. So the first is the relevance gap. So the labor markets are rapidly changing, as we all mentioned, particularly with the growth of artificial intelligence and digital technologies. However, education and training system may require more time to adapt to that rapid change. So as a result, we do have young people who may graduate with strong academic knowledge while still needing additional digital literacy, practical problem-solving abilities, and transferable skills. And here I'm talking about things like communication, teamwork, critical thinking, and creativity in education. And then moving on to the second challenge, we are facing a lot of challenges with regards to the experience gap. So many young people graduate without sufficient opportunities to apply what they have learned through internships and mentoring opportunities and practical projects. So we look at employers who are increasingly look for evidence that that candidate, that student who graduated can translate their knowledge into results. Therefore, practical experience should not be treated as an optional addition to education. It should be considered as an important part of preparing young people for employment. And the third and final challenge, I would say, is the access gap. And this is, I can't emphasize the importance of that, because the opportunity created by technology is not distributed equally, especially in least developed countries that I am responsible for at QFFT. So factors such as connectivity, affordability, geographical location, language, gender, and social circumstances all can influence whether a young person can access digital training, professional networks, internships, and emerging employment opportunities. At the same time, these challenges also present opportunity for us on the other side of that. So AI and artificial intelligence can help expand to education, can help, it can expand the access to that education through personalized learning, improve career guidance, and create new pathways for employment and entrepreneurship. However, technology should be viewed as an enabler rather than the complete solution. And this is where development organizations such as QFFD can contribute, not only through financing, but also in our proposal stages. And when reviewing these proposals and budgets, we bring together partners and we support inclusive programs and ensure that the projects that we support are designed around sustainable development outcomes. And to give you like a very simple example is that a scholarship project, any scholarship project, a scholarship is a very powerful tool and a development investment tool because it can expand access to higher education and gives young people the academic foundation they need to build their future. However, when assessing a scholarship project from a development perspective, we should look beyond the number of students enrolled and the number of students who graduate, because we should also ask whether these students are receiving career guidance and whether they have access to internships. So it's not the number of students who are enrolled and not the number who graduate. It's what goes into that project. We should also examine whether these skills acquired are connected to the labor market back in their home countries and the communities after graduation. So part of my responsibility as a section head is to support my team in examining this complete results chain from project's perspective and budgets to sustainability and long-term development impact that we all ultimately want to achieve. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mariam, and to all our panelists for sharing their valuable insights. So we've heard about the changing labor market, the skills employers increasingly value, and the opportunities and challenges AI presents for young people. So before we continue, we'd like to hear the audience perspective once again. Our second live poll should now appear on your screen. Yes, so the question is, which factor do you think has the greatest impact on a young person's employability today? Is it academic qualifications, practical work experience, digital and AI skills, or soft skills, which is communications, teamwork, adaptability? Let us know. Thank you to those who participated. Let us see the results. Okay, so your responses show that preparing young people for the future of work isn't about any single factor, whether it's academic qualifications, practical experience, digital and AI skills, or transformative skills. Success increasingly depends on a combination of knowledge, competencies, and continuous learning. So this brings us to another key part of today's discussion, how AI is reshaping recruitment, hiring, and workforce development, and what this means for young people that are entering the labor market. So in this second round, we'd like to shift our focus towards solutions. So we have explored how the labor market is changing. Now let us discuss how education institutions, employers, governments, development partners, and young people themselves can respond to these changes and build stronger pathways from education to employment. So we will return to our first panelist, Nirma Ahmed. So earlier you shared your personal journey transitioning from education to employment. I'd like to build on that experience by looking ahead. So my question for you is, if you could go back to your first year in university, what is one skill, experience, or opportunity you would invest in earlier to better prepare yourself for today's labor market?
Thank you. Very intriguing question. If I could go back at my first year of university, I would probably invest very earlier in like two closely connected areas, real world exposure and building a professional network. I would still, of course, study hard and focus on building strong academic foundation, but I would start putting myself out there much earlier instead of waiting until the end of my degree. A common mistake student thinking like I will start thinking about my career when I am close to graduation. I would have benefited from realizing much earlier that employability is something you build gradually over time. It's not something like you switch at the final semester. I would actively look for internship, competitions, project, volunteering opportunities, student societies, conferences, etc. Anything that allows me to step outside the university bubble and interact with people in the real world environment. So all of the student attendees today, good job. I would like, especially today, I would start like building professional network much earlier. For example, like I saw multiple like students here like share LinkedIn, and that is very good. Like LinkedIn like is a platform like not only used for job hunting, but I would use it like from the first or second year, like to follow companies I'm interested in, connect with professionals in my field, and understand what roles exist and what employers value, because everything is changing rapidly. So keep an eye on this is very valuable. I don't mean networking like as simply sending someone a message like, do you have a job for me? Networking is about like being visible, curious, engaged. If you attend a talk, conference, hear someone speak about something you're interested in, connect with them. If you complete a project you're proud of, share it. If there's a professional whose career you admire, follow your work. These small actions build relationship over time and help you understand the work and the work field before you even enter it. I also think students should like not be afraid of reaching out to employers before they feel ready. You don't need to wait until graduation to engage with industry. One most valuable things like you should start thinking like, what do I want to learn? Who would I want to learn from? What industries interest me? What problem are they solving? What I can start doing from now that will make me relevant later. Equally important is building experience, of course, you can talk about, because coursework alone gives you like limited story, but project, internship, competitions, this engagement on leadership roles gives you real evidence of how you work. In addition, of course, since we're talking about AI, like AI and technology, like we should be using them more smartly and intentionally from a very early stage, because these tools are becoming part of almost every profession. We cannot deny that, and significantly can enhance both your learning and productivity as well. So overall, if I could go back, I wouldn't just like focus on collecting certificate and making my CV longer. I would start early, build my skills, build my network, meet professionals, become comfortable thinking, like talking about my work, because graduation, you don't want to start at zero. When you are starting graduating, you want to be ready. You need to have your skills, experience, relationship, and direction already. And might this feel like slightly uncomfortable first, especially if you're like student and just starting it, you don't need to feel like fully ready to start creating opportunities for yourself. So all of you, good luck. Go ahead and wish you all luck in your journey. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nirma, for that and for sharing that great advice. Your experience is a reminder that career readiness is built over time through learning, practical exposure, and personal growth. Let us now hear how education providers can help students build those capabilities before they graduate. So my next question, we will go back to Yahya, the CEO of Go My Code, the co-founder. So Yahya, many employers now value practical experience alongside academic qualifications. How can industry-driven learning complement higher education to better prepare young people for employment?
Yeah, thank you, for the question. I think this question has been trending since the invention of technology and computers. So this is a quite old question, actually, that we humans are constantly trying to really challenge and answer. But I think we've been running the company now for 10 years almost. I think this year is going to be our 10th year. And it's every single day, every single month that we really think and spend time thinking about this problem. And I really don't believe that we should place necessarily higher education and industry driven platforms like GoMyCode, for example, in opposition. So I think young people need both. And in my opinion, and in our view, is the most sustainable path is really to have both. And each plays a different role. And let me explain. So I think higher education provides really strong foundation. So in terms of theory, research, critical thinking, intellectual discipline, and really deeper understanding of a field. You spend years in an academic environment where industry-driven learning platforms like GoMyCode, we really provide the application layer. So we help learners use those foundations that they learn with the current technology trends. Today, for example, developers need to learn new technologies. I need to reskill every 8 months. So every 8 months, software engineers need to learn a new technology. Within the current regulatory academic system, that's barely impossible. So that's why platforms like GoMyCode become, and we apply those foundations that students learn in the academic environment with current technologies, real workflows, employer feedback, and practical projects. And this is even and more particular important in AI because the technology and the way companies apply it is evolving at a speed that we don't understand. So it's evolving much faster than traditional curriculum can be updated today at the academic level. And at GoMyCode, our learning model, the way we build it, the way it's teacher-led, it's project-based, it's master-based, it's also outside of the university regulatory system. We answer different regulations, we answer trainings, and we have much flexibility when answering trainings. Learners do not simply consume content or watch videos in our case, for example, but they also attend practical sessions, complete projects, receive feedback, collaborate with community, and progressively build complex projects. This is quite important in AI because it's really a question of testing, learning, testing, learning. So, for example, I can give the example of our AI development bootcamp again, where learners move from understanding AI to writing Python, to creating APIs, to working with databases, connecting AI to company documents, testing, building assistants, agents, deploying tested products. And for example, a final project at GoMy could be an HR assistant that compares a resume with a job description, like a customer support AI agent, an invoice processing assistant, or a simple automation. So through these projects, learners encounter the realities of a professional work. And it's basically an environment of unclear requirements and perfect data, hallucination, new tools that they never tried, privacy concerns, user feedback. And these challenges are difficult to understand through theory-based knowledge and learning alone. And typically, that's the kind of knowledge that we acquire at an academic or within a university. So this is why platforms like GoMyCode, it's an extension layer to university because we really put students facing these kind of problems and these kind of challenges, and that's a really stronger pathway for them. So and this is my view also. I think this dynamic between academia and platforms like us creates a much stronger pathway. So universities, again, provide the foundation. Applied learning at Go My Code helps the students practice, and projects provide evidence of capability, because knowledge and foundation without proof of capability and proof of building is less relevant today for employers. So employers today provide exposure, feedback, and really access to opportunities. So for us, our mission, for example, does not really compete at just training programs. We want to build obviously bridges between like employment, freelancing, entrepreneurship, and like really for our students who today are based in Dakar, in Lagos, in Tunis, we want to give them opportunities to be global contributors, to be working with companies from all over the world. And so for us, the best outcome is therefore not simply a graduate who has knowledge, but a much larger, much like extended profile, let's say. So like for us, our graduates, we want them to understand the fundamentals, but also can apply to real problems, can build products, can contribute to open software tools, they can experiment with the new tools, they can really demonstrate value. And this has been proven very valuable today in the job market. And so this is how we see it. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Yahya. So building relevant skills is only part of the equation. Young people also need to understand how employers evaluate talent and what sets successful candidates apart. So let us hear that perspective next. So Chris, beyond technical skills, what qualities or experiences most often distinguish young candidates who successfully transition into employment?
Thanks. So I'll talk about three themes. The first of which might be kind of challenging the question, as I think it was never really about technical skills for young candidates. Even when we were hiring an entry-level accountant with a degree in accountancy, an employer always knew that they needed training. They didn't have the skills yet. What they were looking for when they ran a recruitment was an ability to learn. And I think with AI, we're just moving to an extreme of this. The ability to learn is more important than ever, right? Nehma mentioned that earlier. Yahya said the engineers need to relearn every 8 months. At the Job Tech Alliance, we often talk about slope rather than intercept. And that kind of means that rather than recruiters picking for where someone is now, kind of where they intercept, it's looking at their slope, looking at the evidence that this person has a capacity to learn and keep growing. So the kind of first real skill is not just that ability to learn, but from a recruitment perspective, being able to demonstrate the ability to learn and to grow is going to become increasingly important for young people. The second theme is around kind of AI skills and AI automation skills. Now, I'd say positively, I think there's a real time-limited opportunity here in the context of what we discussed before of a shrinking of entry-level jobs. With this new technology, there is an opportunity to be as experienced as tenured employees in this kind of newest technical area of AI, right? There's a great reset, right? Everyone in the world right now is entry level in AI to some extent, right? You don't have a 5 years of experience in accountancy, but others do. But you might only have 6 months of experience utilizing AI, but that's no less than the accountant with 5 years of experience. Indeed, it might be more, as young people are increasingly kind of going through university, utilizing AI and being more AI native. So I think that really is a critical skill. There's a huge opportunity to bring something to the labor market that doesn't necessarily exist in a lot of companies right now. I know one fantastic Nigerian company, which is taking young people with zero experience, teaching them how to be AI automators and deploying them within companies, where they're bringing a whole new skill set that doesn't exist within these companies so far, but it doesn't require years of experience to do it. And the third theme is the very obvious one, but it's everything that remains the most human, right? Everyone always talks about creativity. I'd also say entrepreneurialism is a key thing, but the one I would choose to focus on within that human category is something that Nirma spoke about as well, which is social skills. I think there's two key elements to that. One is being able to demonstrate teamwork and ability to work with others. Nima kind of talked about how university was about working by yourself and the world of work was about working with others. And being able to demonstrate how you can be part of a team is so important. And the second one, which Nima also talked about, is like capacity to network build. And while increasingly the stuff that lives in the digital world could be replaceable, what stays offline is relationships in person and the ability to demonstrate that ability to build a network, which could be important for a future sale or that could be critical for a future partnership, is going to be so important. And even just very much starting out at the recruitment stage and job seeker stage, if you're going to be applying for jobs online and you have all of those bots sending out 500 automated applications, your best bet is probably by building those in-person relationships with recruiters and really demonstrating those social skills from the outset. Back to you, Nick.
Thank you so much, Chris. So we've talked about what young people can do individually, but preparing the next generation also takes coordinated action across institutions and sectors. So let us close this round by exploring the role of partnerships and long-term investments, which takes us to Mariam. So preparing young people for the future of work requires collaboration across governments, education institutions, employers, and development organizations. So in your experience, what makes these partnerships successful and sustainable?
Well, thank you, Noof, once again. So in my experience, successful partnerships always begin with a clear and shared outcome. So partners may represent different sectors and have different responsibilities, but they all must agree at the end of the day on the changes that they're trying to make and the changes that they want to achieve for young people. So the objective should always, it should not simply be to deliver training or award a qualification or complete a list of activities. And this should be across the board in all our projects. The wider objective should be to create credible pathways that help young people move into meaningful employment, entrepreneurship, and other sustainable economic opportunities. And the second factor is to have a clear and complementary role between different entities. So, for example, governments can be providers of policy direction, national priorities, and an enabling environment. Educational institutions, on the other hand, can contribute to academic expertise, curricula, and direct access to students. Employers also can provide current information about the current status of the labor market, the needs, and they can offer internships to those students as well. Lastly, development organizations and financing institutions like QFFD can convey these different factors, support innovation, and provide resources, and then also help programs reach young people who may otherwise be excluded or marginalized from that cycle. The third factor I'd say is local ownership, and I can't emphasize the importance of this because across the African and Asian portfolios that I oversee, context is extremely important. A model that works successfully in X country cannot simply be transferred to another country without understanding its labor market, institutional capacity, the status of the institution, the economic conditions, and the particular barriers young people face in that specific context. This means partnership should be designed around local priorities and evidence. Local institutions should be involved from the get-go, from the very beginning, and young people themselves should be treated as active partners rather than just mere beneficiaries in the cycle. Their experiences can help us identify barriers, and this is very evident in many of our projects across Africa and Asia. And it can also improve the project design, the proposals, and also it determines whether the proposed support genuinely reflects their needs or not. And lastly, I would say sustainability. And when we talk about sustainability, it should be, or like sustainability should not be discussed only at the end of the project. It should also be considered, or like it should be considered from the design stage, from the proposal stage. Because in reviewing proposals and implementation plans, we look for a clear problem statement, realistic objective, and defined responsibilities, also measurable indicators from the get-go. Employers and local institutions should be involved early on so that the pathway created by the project does not disappear when the project ends from its initial financial cycle. Therefore, I believe that the strongest partnership is not necessarily the partnership with the largest number of organizations. It is the partnership in which every organization has a clear role, decisions are informed by local evidence, and young people participate meaningfully, resulting into measurable impacts in projects. Yeah, I think that's it from my end.
Thank you so much, Maria. So throughout today's discussion, we've heard that preparing young people for the future of work takes more than education alone. So it takes relevant skills, practical experience, lifelong learning, and a strong cross-sector partnership. So before opening the floor to the Q&A, we'd like to hear from you one more time. Our last poll should appear now on your screen. Yes. So in your opinion, which area should be prioritized to better prepare young people for the future of work? Modernizing education systems and curricula, expanding internships and work-based learning, strengthening AI and digital skills, investing in career guidance and mentoring, or building stronger partnerships between education and employers? Let us know your thoughts. Thank you so much to those that participated. So looking at the results, your responses reinforce something we've heard throughout today's discussion. There is no single solution to preparing young people for the future of work. So it takes quality education, relevant skills, practical experiences, real-life collaboration between governments, employers, education institutions, development partners, and young people themselves. So let us now open the discussion to our audience and hear your questions. Once again, thank you all so much for our panelists for sharing such valuable insights and perspective throughout today's discussion. We've explored how AI is reshaping the labor market, the skills young people will need to succeed, and the role of educational institutions in strengthening education to employment pathways. So if you haven't already done so, please submit your questions using the Q&A function. You are welcome to direct your questions to a specific panelist or to the panel as a whole, and we will do our best to answer as many questions as time allows. We've received one question, and Chris, the question is for you. So Hidayah in the comments wrote, if AI takes over some of the tasks through which beginners traditionally learned, how will young people gain the experience and on the project training required to become experts?
So sorry, just to repeat the question, how do young people get the on-the-job experience?
How do they gain the experience and on-the-job training? Yes.
So one thing I'm very enthusiastic about, a real sign of optimism for me in the era of AI. At the Job Tech Alliance, we've historically been very down on EdTech, quite simply. We kind of struggled to see how EdTech could scale, be affordable, particularly for disadvantaged people, and could really best offer sorry, just to point out, I mean, EdTech for the world of work. We think EdTech can be great for literacy, but for the world of work, what needs to typically be true? It needs to be close to the experience of work. It needs to be dynamic and real life. and it needs to be tailored to the needs of the individual. And just historically, it's been very hard to do that, right? Every single job is such a different experience. And how do you provide a meaningful learning opportunity? Now, what AI has newly enabled is work-based learning that doesn't necessarily need to be real, right? We work with a number of great platforms, edtech platforms today, that are doing synthetic or simulated internships. So internships, one of the questions was like, should we invest more in internships? And they're great, but extremely expensive, hard to scale and hard to manage. But what we're seeing as a possibility now with AI is that it's quite easy to create these simulated work environments that can give very real work experience, so that people can get exposure to some of the difficulties of, emailing a response to a conflict between two colleagues, without having to kind of do that in real life. So it's not a complete answer to your question, but it's one area that is new, possible, and we're extremely enthusiastic about the possibility of AI-enabled edtech to provide scaled real-life experience for those who have none.
Thank you so much, Chris, for sharing. Our next question is to Yahya from Volan. He says, I like your model of responding to the labor market by linking demanded job skills to what you prepare them. How do you sustain this, and how do you address conflict of interest in terms of your priorities versus employers' priorities? Or are you entirely aligning with them with what the labor markets or jobs demand? And Yahya, you only have 1 minute in the interest of time, please.
Yes, I'll try to be very precise, Volin, with this question, which is, it's a very, we can spend hours talking about this, but basically, it's for us, it's so we respond to the job market. So we build programs while talking to real companies and enterprise and governments, because we want to maximize, and as I explained, we are this extension layer to the academic layer. So our mission is to really maximize the employment path for our students and graduates. And the mission of the company is really to show economic impact on the student's life. So we really directly respond to the job market, so very focused on that and the job demand and changing nature of technologies. And the way we maintain this is a mix of the way we build the programs, the way we build the learning platform, the way we build the methodology. We build a lot of tools today that let us update the content. So we have a content editor tool that is AI first today, with it you can build a lot of content, with it you can deploy tracks fast, with it you can design curriculum. So that's the first thing, which is technology. And the second thing is we talk to companies. So we spend a lot of time, me personally, I spend a lot of time talking to HR directors, to founders, to CEOs, to directors, understanding really their need, their pain point, the trend, and really the opportunity today with AI. So we spend a lot of time listening to companies, and we have a structure today. We have country managers in countries, because like as mentioned, Mariam, countries are very different. The local context is quite important. Actually, the hiring needs in Nigeria are very different from the hiring needs in Tunisia. They're very different from the hiring needs of Kenya. So it's a work that we do at the local level with the country manager of the country, trying to really size the needs, the local needs in terms of technologies, in terms of talents, in terms of profiles. And we spend a lot of time and energy and money doing this, basically, with the work that we do with building the technology and the platform and the content tool that let us really build tracks really fast. So it's a mix, of talking to users and companies and building technology that let us really move fast.
Thank you so much, Yahya. And to those who have questions that they put in the chat, unfortunately, we only have had time for these 2 questions. So as we come to an end of today's webinar, I would like to extend my sincere thanks to all our panelists for sharing their expertise, experiences, and insights. Today's discussion showed that while AI is transforming the world of work, it is also creating new opportunities for innovation, collaboration, and lifelong learning. Preparing young people for this future takes more than academic achievement. It takes practical experience, digital and transferable skills, adaptability, and strong partnerships between educational institutions, employers, governments, development partners, and young people themselves. So thank you all so much for joining. Each of our speakers brought a different perspective, but one message came through clearly. Preparing young people for the future of work is a shared responsibility, and no single institution can do it alone. I would also like to thank everyone who joined us today. Your active participation through the polls, the chat, and the Q&A has enriched this conversation. And we hope the ideas shared here will inspire continued collaboration and action beyond this webinar. So on behalf of the Education Above All Foundation, thank you once again for being with us as we celebrate International Youth Day. We encourage you to stay connected with EAA and follow our work as we continue supporting youth education, skills development, and economic empowerment throughout the world. Thank you all so much, and we wish you a wonderful day.